Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today has 36 years of experience in the martial arts, in which he has attained 4 black belts. With perseverance, he overcame homelessness and decided to make martial arts his life's journey. Throughout his martial arts career, he's worked with many greats like Chuck Norris, Shannon Lee, and former guest of the show, Carmichael Simon. He is now the proud owner of the Austin Karate Center for over 5 years. Outside of the martial arts, he's an audio engineer, music producer, and records audiobooks for martial artists. He's worked in the film industry as a stuntman and actor on small and big projects. He's also a lover of dance and movement, and in the near future is hoping to write his autobiography and a film script. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. Nathaniel Jr. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, sir. Thank you for allowing me to be here. It's an honor, and I appreciate your time.
Hey, I appreciate it, and a shout out to Carmichael for sending you my way. We love when former guests send more guests to the show. It keeps the show going, so appreciate that, Carmichael.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Carmichael.
Well, what we like to do with all my guests, I want to go back to the very beginning. I said you've been doing this for 36 years, but I want to know what led to that. I want to know where that first interest in martial arts came from, that first spark that kind of kicked off your martial arts journey.
So it all, for me, started with Bruce Lee. I was watching The Chinese Connection,
Nice.
Which people call Fist of Fury now, I believe.
Yep.
And that set it off. I asked my dad, I was like, Dad, what is that? I want to do that. And it just became an addiction. So after throwing kicks and watching, blood sport, my dad was into the martial arts movies.
Nice.
And apparently he was a red belt in Taekwondo. I didn't know that at the time.
Really?
Right.
Nice.
Yeah. And so after being able to do the splits, after watching Van Damme do it, he was like, you got to go. And that started it at age 4.
Oh, wow. Age 4. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And then I remember the first time I sparred, I got my butt whipped.
Of course.
And that was it for me. That was it. It was something that I didn't understand, but I had this hunger for. And I don't know if it was just watching Bruce Lee's energy on the film or if it was something that kind of clicked for me as like a survival instinct of understanding, oh, snap, it's not as easy as he made it look.
Mm-hmm.
So it just started giving me this wild journey of trying to understand why and how is he so good? What is that mastery about? And that was it.
Wow. So at age 4, do you remember, first of all, what was that first style? And do you remember like what went into your dad choosing the school? Was that the school he had trained at, or was it just the closest to your house? Do you remember any of that?
I remember we lived in Killeen, Texas at the time, which is a military base. And I'm half Korean and half black.
Mm-hmm.
And so being half Korean and him being in Taekwondo, it was just around the facilities. So so we started in Taekwondo, and that was like actually short-lived. We only went there for about a week.
Oh, okay.
Sadly, my parents divorced at that time, and then we moved to South Texas, and I lived with my dad. Afterwards, he remarried, and my stepmom was actually a black belt in American karate.
Nice.
Which I later on found out was Tung Sudo.
Okay.
And so then I started picking it back up in 3rd grade up until then. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I started Tung Sudo when I was 10, actually. That was my first style.
It was the thing in America.
Yeah.
Everybody was doing it. And, Chuck Norris led a lot of that, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that plus the Karate Kid. I mean, a lot of the stuff they did was Tung Sudo. So, yeah.
Don't get me started on that.
Yep. I've actually told the story many times. 10 years old, June of 84, went to the opening night of Karate Kid. And when we were walking out, the local Tung Sudo school was in the lobby handing out free passes. That's how I started martial arts. Huge part of my life was the Karate Kid movie.
I'm all about that. I feel like that's what we need back in our generation these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there hasn't really. I've had this discussion with so many guests where it's like you look back over what led to some of the martial arts booms in the U.S. and had the school. The first one was probably Bruce Lee, Enter the Dragon. That was huge. But from what I've heard, is a lot of that was more adults joining martial arts. And then you fast forward, a little over 10 years to the Karate Kid, and that had an influx of kids and teenagers joining, and that kind of kept going through the 80s and early 90s because you went into the Ninja Turtles and you went into the Power Rangers, you went into Mortal Kombat, WMAC Masters. All those shows like that. So you had that 10 plus year period where so many kids joined the martial arts. And then, of course, the UFC, once that got big, that was more shift again for the adults. But we've had some good shows and stuff, but nothing that's really had a boom like that again since probably since UFC in the early 2000s. At least not that I can. I mean, there's been big shows like Cobra Kai and stuff, but I talked to instructors, and from what I've heard, that hasn't really led to a huge boost in students. I mean, yes, some people join because of it, not like they did with those other ones.
Absolutely. And, that's something that I've been really interested in and exploring is like, what is it going to take for those kids to understand martial arts and how much of a benefit it is for you?
Right.
And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but you know how we had the, what do we call them? When you see everybody training in all of those movies, there was
montage,
always, yes, the montages. That was what motivated me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to copy them and do the same things. I think if we put a little bit more of that, because it taught a kid how to do something that they had no idea of how to do.
Yeah. Sometimes those get bad raps too, because you're like, kind of like the Karate Kid. Like I said, I love it. I watched it every year, but it's like, yeah, you do the training montage. It's like, yeah, it makes him look like he can get his black belt in 3 months. so I get both sides of that argument, but I definitely get what you're saying. I mean, look at the Rocky training montage. I mean, Golden Gloves boxing had such a boom in the 80s because of the Rocky movies and the training montage. I mean, the training montage from the first Rocky and from Rocky IV when he was in Russia and you're doing the training and running through the snow. I mean, those were huge. I think it was Rocky IV when boxing really took off in my hometown too.
Absolutely. See, I'm glad we come from the same era and we understand that because, that is that's something that really drives a lot of us to keep on doing this, that love.
Well, one thing too, and I don't know, maybe it's different, but when I was younger, and not as a kid, but as a teenager, when I was after college, and probably from 94 through like 2000, the traditional Taekwondo school I trained at, well, I still train at, we used to do demonstrations around the community like once or twice a month, probably. I mean, I have videotapes of doing demonstrations at like fairs, and I mean, even we did a demonstration inside a Walmart. We did a demonstration inside a Media Play. I think Barnes and Noble, and I mean, all these places where you're doing demonstrate, and you just don't see that much anymore. So I don't know what changed with that, because that was huge too. We used to get a lot of students from doing that.
Absolutely. I grew up doing that too. So yeah.
Your school, do you guys do that? Do you guys do demonstrations like that?
We don't, but we've been thinking about doing something similar. We're just in the process of cleaning up a lot of, I guess you would say, basics and seeing who's the performers and who's not the performers.
Makes sense.
And then we're pretty good right now. So it's about time for us to start creating. And that's the part I'm really excited about for 2025.
Kind of jumped ahead a little bit. To back up now, that second school, was that a Tang Soo Do school, or what style was that second school you joined?
Oh, it was American karate.
Okay.
But learning the katas, I figured out it was Tang Soo Do.
Nice. And how long were you at that school?
All the way until I was 19 years old. Wow. And that's when I got my first black belt.
Okay. So did you get involved in the competition at that time?
Absolutely. This was around the 90s, 2000s era, around 2000 to 1992 to around 2010-ish.
Okay. What led to the competition? What made you want to do that?
My first instructor, Joseph Hernandez, was he was just trying to be the best instructor that he could be for us. And he went and trained with Raymond Daniels for like 3 months and closed the dojo down and brought back all of this information so that way we could be successful. And number one, I saw that, how much he cared about us. And then number two, how effective it was for all of us as a group. It just made us all like love each other more.
Nice.
And that's what competition is like. How do I build a family who understands the same morals and values that I do and understand how much I love them because I'm pouring this energy into them so they can be number one?
Nice. Yeah, and it's so different for me because I never got into the competition. I've done one tournament my whole life. It's never been something I've loved training other people for it, but it's just never been something that I've wanted to do. So it's just, I love asking that question because it's always interesting to hear what led people down that path. Because I know people from both sides. I know people who just absolutely will not do it, and kind of like the Mr. Miyagi doesn't believe in tournaments type thing, and versus that's all they do. That's their main focus, and then people in between. It's like, yeah, we do a couple tournaments a year and stuff. So it's interesting to see that range of interest in that.
Not to get off topic, but for me, I find that it is a safe way for our students to pressure test what they've learned and to see where they stand amongst their peers, not just in the dojo, but in the community.
Nice.
And there's either one or two things that's going to happen. Either they're going to either get it or they're going to not get it. Either way, both is good and okay, in my opinion, because it lets them know where they want to go in this journey. So that's a big reason why I make my kids go to at least one tournament just to see how much they've grown.
Okay. So you said you were at that first school until you were 19. So what was next? Did you specifically go to search for a different style, or did you move and just had to find a new school? What led to your next style you started training in?
So funny story. I was heavy into dancing at that time. I mean, this was a time when dancing was everywhere, competitions, battles. So I was heavy into dancing, and I thought I had wanted to go to Juilliard.
Oh, wow.
Coming out of high school, because I was just a beast. I don't know any way to say it, but there was not very many people who could do what I could do, being a martial artist and being able to dance. So, fast forward, understanding the financial obligations needed to travel and everything, I was like, oh, that's not going to happen. So then that led me to wonder, like, what do I want to do? And I was like, I kind of love dancing. I wonder why. And that led me into the music production.
Okay.
So I found this school in San Antonio that taught you how to be an audio engineer. And that's where my journey started. And, I was working at this grocery store at the time, and this guy came up to me and said, hey, give me these tickets to, I think it was the World Combat League at the time. For Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I missed that so much. That was so much fun.
Yeah. And I was just so happened to be going to the same thing. And I told him, hey, I'm going to that too. He's like, oh, really? You're a martial artist? I was like, yeah. And he's like, where are you trained? I was like, I really don't have a dojo yet. I'm just moved here. It's like, my dojo's right down the street. Come and check it out. His name is Grandmaster Larry Lockhart Jr.
Okay. And
then that relationship just blossomed. I stayed with him for maybe 10, 11 years.
Oh, wow.
And he made me look at martial arts at such an elevated high level that it made me appreciate everything, every style, every person. And I was just trying to absorb as much as I possibly could.
And what style was that?
So he's very decorated. Mm-hmm. He has a black belt from, I believe, Atlee Chittum, the Golden Greek. He studied with Joe Louis, Benny the Jet, Bill Wallace. This was the time where karate was just coming out of the bare knuckle era,
right,
where they didn't really have gear. So those were the greats that he trained with, because his father was a grandmaster and in the area, in the circuit as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Shotokan, Aki Jiu-Jitsu, Filipino stick fighting.
Nice.
What else? Those were the main three for me that he wanted me to be proficient in, because they went along with my style.
Okay.
But there was like 5 masters in that dojo.
Wow.
So it was very eye-opening to be able to go to each one of them, see what they were proficient in, and learn from them. I also learned Ed Parker Kempo there too.
Nice.
Yeah. That was, oh man, the self-defense in that system, devastating.
I actually moved to California for a year to train in American Kempo back in the 90s.
I think it's something that not a lot of martial artists get an opportunity to appreciate.
Yeah.
But man, if you want self-defense, that is it.
I see a lot of people online who have never actually trained in it and just see it and don't understand it. And they're like ripping it apart and like, you have no idea what you're talking about. You need to actually train in the system with a good instructor because it is legitimate. Very legitimate.
Absolutely.
That's cool. And you said you were there about 11 years. And did you attain any black belts when you were with him?
Yes, I got all the way up to 4th degree black belt there.
Wow.
And so afterwards, my journey led me here to Austin, Texas, because I wanted to find, work for what I went to school for in audio engineering. And so, live music capital of the world, I was like, yeah, let's go there. And at the time working with HEB, the grocery store, I just transferred over. And it just so happened that they were starting, to do live music. So I found myself into that department. During this whole time, I didn't have any school to like associate myself with. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of when I hit rock bottom. The job wasn't, I guess you would say, having processes and procedures for this new thing that rolled out. And mm-hmm. being with the company for so long, I had very strong integrity about certain things. So that led me to decide to separate from the company. And that's when the rock bottom happened. Okay. Relationship went sour from there, was homeless at the time. And for like 8 months, slept on a buddy's couch and kind of figured out what I wanted to do, which led me back to martial arts. I was willing to go anywhere to kick somebody in the head. Wow. For the rest of my life. Okay. That was my goal. I want to be able to do this for the rest of my life for my health and to spread what I know. And so this job called I Love Kickboxing came along and I became a manager over there. And that happened for quite some time, I believe about 3 years. Okay. And I learned a lot because, we were able to attain some kickboxers, some Muay Thai people, and kind of get an understanding of what kickboxing is. My background in karate made it very easy to understand how to apply everything. And it just gave me so much more of appreciation for all martial arts.
That's cool.
Yeah, dude, it was a blessing because I got to train every day. Mm-hmm. And so being able to train every day led me to want to compete again. So I made a vow to myself because I found that every time I stopped training, something bad in my life would happen. Yeah. And so I made a vow, I'm going to train and I'm going to go to one competition every month for 1 year and I'm going to just see what happens.
Wow.
Oh, man. So after that, I had this opportunity to go across seas and represent America in Guatemala for this league. I forget the name of it at the time. And I had put together this fundraiser and everything for it. And I achieved enough money to do so. Okay. At the same time, I had just discovered Goju Ryu with a gentleman named Sensei Veris, and I fell in love with it. I couldn't do it. And my body was not capable because of all the previous injuries. So I spent a lot of time figuring out what is this old school style of martial arts and why am I so attracted to it? So fast forward in about a year, at the same time I'm supposed to go to this tournament, Sensei Vera says, hey, there's a test and you can test for your black belt. Wow. That was the hardest choice I had to make because I'd raised so much money to go overseas and so many people showed me how much they supported me. I'm not talking about like people from back home, people who just been keeping up with me throughout my life, martial artist friends, everybody. So I decided to go with the belt. Wow. The reason I decided to go with the belt was because I knew I could possibly take some kids to the Olympics. I knew the Olympics were coming up in the future, and I wanted to be able to take a kid to that level. And that's why I did it. Okay. Shortly afterwards, that money that I raised for the tournament, I used to open up a school. Nice. And that's how Austin Karate Center came out.
So I got to ask you then, through your different black belt tests you've had through different styles, which one was the hardest physically as far as like what you had to do and what you had to accomplish? Which one do you think was the hardest black belt test?
Just because of the age and the mindset and the things that one has to go through childhood. Everybody's journey is different. I think that first one.
Nice. I've never really asked that before, I guess, to anyone, but I'm assuming that would probably be more of the majority people would say that because, yeah, I'm not saying once you've done one, the rest will be easy, but I would definitely think once you're an established martial artist, other ones would be at least easier.
Absolutely. I believe that, if you have a good coach and somebody who cares about you, they're going to make sure you are prepared for life.
Yeah.
When you attain that first black belt.
Nice.
And that's what it did for me. It's like nothing else is going to be harder than this, really.
Mm-hmm.
I can do anything if I can do this. 2 grown men coming in at the age of 19 and whooping my ass, and me being able to hold my own and, stick my ground. Yeah, I can go out into the world now and handle myself with confidence. So that, I believe, was the hardest black belt, because, you're a kid and you have to learn how to grow up and basically be okay with taking a life if it means it, to protect yourself and to protect others.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it, and so I think that's why the first one is always the hardest.
So I'm assuming through some of your black belt tests, some of them involved like board breaking or brick breaking.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the hardest break you've had to do for a test?
Flame breaks.
Really? Okay.
Flame breaks, because you have to be so in tune because you feel so much. And you know what the flames are doing? It's building pressure, right? You got people watching you.
Yeah.
That's why the flames are there. And it's something just different about it. The way it explodes when you hit it. Mm-hmm. That's something that, I don't know. It's different from just breaking regular.
Yeah.
The flames add a different element.
That's actually, I've never had to do one of those. That's kind of cool. I think my hardest ever was probably the first time I had to break a brick with my head.
I've never had to do that.
Really? Yeah, that one led to me. The very first time I had to try it, I didn't break it. This was back in 1996, the first time I tested for my black belt. And it was kind of, funny when I think about it, because basically all I did was smash my head into a brick like 4 times because I didn't break it. But when I, years later, not to get into my whole story, but I moved to California to train American Kempo, came back to test for my black belt, didn't pass, went back to California. Then when I came back, I got married and started a family. So I actually did not retake my black belt test for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And that time it was kind of funny. I was testing with a 15-year-old. So I was, probably almost 30 at the time, but I was testing with a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old. And the 15-year-old went up and got his, and it was like first try. Then the 19 got hers on her second. And I went up there, and my instructor could tell I was nervous. And he comes up to me, he goes, "Look at the kid over there." I go, "Yes, sir." He goes, "He's a 15-year-old kid." I go, "Yes, sir." He goes, "He's too stupid to know you shouldn't be smashing your head into a brick. Just go do it." And I got it on my first try. So it was like, I knew before it was all mental. It was completely mental. It was a mental block, but it was like, you could tell I was nervous and I was aiming too many times. So yeah, he just came up and said that, and first try, no problem. So, but that first time, like 10 years prior, was definitely the hardest break I ever had to do.
Yeah, right. The pressure we put on ourselves. And it's funny how he framed it. Like, that kid doesn't even know that this is dangerous. You shouldn't be doing this. He just does it.
Yep, exactly.
He's
too young and dumb. He doesn't know you shouldn't be smashing your head into a brick. Just go do it.
Right.
Exactly. Out of all your tests, like during which tests, what's the most breaks you've had to do during a test? Like our black belt test for the school I go to, we average about 10 different breaks throughout our test. I'm just kind of curious, because I've talked to some where they don't do any breaks, and some where they've done up to 15, some where they only do 3 or 4, some where they only have to do 1. I'm just kind of curious, where yours falls into that range. What's the most you had to do in one test?
I've only had to do 3.
Wow. Okay. It's so different. Every school is so different. And with our 10, we usually, with most of our tests, we only know about one of them. It'd be like, all right, this is your main break. You have to put, like me, it was the head break. I knew that was coming. All the other ones, my instructor usually picks the day of. It's like, well, you're working on technique. I'm like, oh, that was a beautiful turning side kick. Let's do turning side kick, 3 boards. Or on the flip side, oh, that was a horrible hook kick. Let's do hook kick, 2 boards. It's like,
yeah,
you
I
pick
remember
them based
those.
on your technique. So yeah.
I remember one in particular from my first degree. Oh, you're good at axe kick. You did 1. Okay, now do 2.
Yep.
But they didn't put a spacer between it.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Missed on the first one. The second one I got it, but my heel was hurting for a week after that.
Jeez.
But the lesson was, like, if you can break through 2 of these, you can rip someone's collarbone apart.
Yeah. Yep.
I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Y'all are crazy, and I love it.
That's one time the first time I ever broke a brick, ever, in any kind of break. I think it was a purple belt. We were doing a demonstration. I remember my instructor, at the time, I wasn't going to do any breaks at the demonstration. I was only doing technique. And a black belt came up to him who was already a black belt and said, "Sir, I'd like to do, a forearm, 1 brick break." And he goes, "You can't do that, sir. Mr. Bryan's doing 3. And I'm like, "Excuse me, sir?" And he pulled me aside. He goes, "Mr. Bryan, if you can break 1, you can break 3. He goes, because the weight and the pressure breaks through. So if you can break 1, you can break 3. After 3, it gets harder. But if you can break 1, and I got it on my first try at the demonstration. And I was like, oh, I mean, he obviously had more confidence in me than I had in myself.
Man.
Yeah. I mean, as a purple belt, I'm breaking 3 bricks. It's like, okay, this is kind of fun.
Can you imagine the confidence you had?
Afterwards? Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Well, it was even worse. Was like, a month later, we're doing another demonstration. He's like, Mr. Ryan, you're doing 5 today. I'm like, okay, sir. I think he ended up getting me up to 6 within a year. I did 6 bricks forearm. But it was funny then because for our black belt test, that same one I was talking about, the other black belts, he wanted them to do 3. He pulls me aside. He goes, I can't give them both a forearm break and not give you one. He goes, they don't know you've done 6 in the past. Just go do the 3 and just walk away. So it's like he knows that he knew I could do it with my eyes closed, but he's like, he didn't, obviously wasn't going to give them 6 because they had never done it before. And so he's like, all right, just go do 3 like they do. And it's a giveaway break. I'm like, okay, sir.
Wow.
So yeah. Good time.
Jeez.
Nice.
I got to respect those who can do breaks. So many like that. It's amazing to see.
Yeah. I got cocky once and tried 8 and I did not get it. Did not go well. So.
I've seen this gentleman named Larry Fields. He will point to a brick like on Bloodsport and say, I'm going to break that one. Pow.
I've seen that. A few times.
That's crazy to me.
I know my instructor's instructor, Grandmaster Mu Young Yun from Korea, I believe at one point had the world record, I think, of doing 12 bricks with his head at one point years ago. Never got to see it. So I saw him do 6 or 8 one time. I heard stories about him doing massive breaks and stuff. It was like, okay, not me. That's good though.
Get to know you could do it.
Exactly. So you mentioned now opening the school. First of all, what led you to the teaching side of martial arts, and when did that start? Like which school were you at, and which style when you started teaching for the first time?
So I was in Grandmaster Lockhart School, which was called Excalibur Martial Arts. I believe it was around 2014 or 15 when I torn my right ACL in a tournament. And, the doctor basically said, you shouldn't be doing martial arts anymore. And I'm like, this is not going to happen. I'm not letting it happen. And you know what? Grandmaster Lockhart was such a blessing because he had 2 knee surgeries already. Both of his knees were done. And he was still able to do full splits and kick people in the face.
Nice.
So he was the example to show me, hey, Nelson, you're not going to leave martial arts. You're going to get even better now. And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, you're going to need to start teaching. I hated teaching. I could do it, but I hated doing it because I was selfishly working on myself. But that was when I really started to appreciate it because it made me clean up a lot of my techniques. And it showed me that I didn't need to use power. I could just use technique and timing. And it also helped me, rehab.
How long do you think it took you before you realized? One thing I've learned from everyone I've talked to who teaches is they realize that teaching helps them learn their own technique so much better. How long did that take? Because you said you hated it at first. How long did that take to click and before you realized I'm doing this better because I'm showing other people how to do it?
It didn't click until I was teaching kickboxing.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because kickboxing was not my, it wasn't my main thing. And they wanted you to teach a certain way at this franchise. And when I taught that way, I was just a beast at it. So I was like, it's not a coincidence that everybody who I come in contact with gets better.
Yeah.
It's not a coincidence. I am very much the common denominator here. And then, people start telling you. And one thing as a martial artist, you always try to be humble. But when a lot of people start telling you over and over, then it starts to click.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
That's cool. I know for me, I remember, I don't remember the exact date, but I remember in my mind exactly when it happened because I was teaching someone and I was looking through my notes of all my technique. And I looking at my notes and I'm like, wait a second, the way I teach this doesn't really match the notes for the way I do it. And I had to start writing. I basically started a whole new notebook for instructor notes. And I'm like, wait a second. Yeah. And I started breaking it down more as my instructor notes. I'm like, wow, this makes so much more sense. And I was like, that day, I'm like, okay, this is really helpful. So yeah, it was kind of cool. And as you probably know, teaching's not for everybody. I mean, I know most people, when they get their black belt, their instructor tries to have them help teaching and stuff, or some even before that. I mean, I think my instructor gave me my first class when I was a purple belt or purple trim. I think they have everyone try it. And then they can usually tell who's really good at it and who's meant to do it. And those are the ones they kind of work with and polish and know that they have a future in teaching if they want to. So It's good that
Yes.
it worked for you and you found it, because that's, like I said, it's not for everyone.
You know, it's funny you say that, Brian, about trying to help your instructors.
Mm-hmm.
Is because as a manager, that's what I had to do. I had to help them teach everybody else. And I didn't realize that until you said that.
Yep.
And then that really does something to the psyche, and it keeps you accountable for what happens afterwards, right?
Yeah, definitely. I know I've told the story a few times on the show, but I was, like I said, I was a purple trim, and I was helping in class every now and then. I had never really thought about being an instructor, and my instructor pulled me aside. He goes, "Have you ever considered having like maybe your own school someday?" And I said, "Yeah, I actually have thought about it, sir. It could be fun." He goes, "Be here Tuesday night at 7:30. I'm like, "Oh, yes, sir." So I showed up Tuesday night, and I walk in, and there's a class, all people that are higher belts than me. And I'm thinking maybe this is like an instructor class. And he goes, he goes over to me and he goes, "Class." And they go, "Yes, sir." They go, "Mr. Bryant's in charge tonight." And he walked out.
Oh,
and I'm
man.
like, I stopped him. I'm like, "Sir." He goes, "You're in charge, sir. If they don't listen, give them push-ups." And I'm assuming, I don't know this, I've never asked him, but I'm assuming he probably talked to them beforehand. He said, "This is a test for Mr. Bryan. Be respectful. If he listen to him and stuff. If not, you're going to get push-ups, but it's his class." And I had that class for, I think, 6-8 months where I taught almost all people that were higher belts than me. And like I said, it helped my own technique so much, but it also helped me get over, that's what got over my fear of public speaking. Cause I used to be deathly terrified, stage fright and stuff. And him doing that to me was what helped me get over that. Yeah. Good times.
My experience was quite different whenever I had to teach. I mean, I've always had opportunities to teach, but I remember this one particular time where I was the younger belt. And everybody's, they're grown men in their professions, high black belt masters, all masters. I'm not a master yet. And I have to teach them a class.
Yep.
And I had prepared so much information trying to figure out what could I possibly teach these masters that they don't know already. And so I was like, oh, okay, I'll teach them the same thing they taught me, but like, how does it apply on the ground? So I'll get ready. None of them want to go to the ground. None of them want to go to the ground.
Wow.
So my lesson is done. But that taught me something. And that lit a fire under my ass. It's like, I'm never going to be incompetent in my martial arts ever again.
That's cool. So I want you to think back to that first time you ever taught to now. What do you think over those years has changed about your teaching style?
Ooh, so much. I've surrounded myself with the top instructors around the world just to feel how they teach, and so I can pour it back into them. I think the main thing that's changed for me is this. As soon as I learn something, I teach it as fast as I possibly can. Okay. And then I instruct others to do the same.
Nice.
I understand that there's a science behind that. If you do it this way, you'll retain 90% of it, and you'll retain it quicker. And I believe that's helped compound how I teach and the quality of my teaching.
Nice. I like it. So you mentioned opening your own school. So what led to that decision? I know you said you didn't take the trip overseas and that's what you used the money for, but was there like a point where you just said, I need to open my own school? Did your instructor say, hey, maybe you're ready for, what kind of led to that decision to open your own school?
So shortly after working at the kickboxing place, I got the opportunity to work for a foundation called Kickstart Kids, which was ran by Chuck Norris.
Yep.
Yeah. And so when I went and took that job, I was actually living in South Austin, and the job was all the way like North Austin, about an hour away.
Oh, wow.
So doing that for 2 years, seeing what the kids' lives were like inside of a school system, seeing how hard it is to be a good instructor in the school system because of all of the restrictions and the parents, it made it so hard. But what it did teach me was I could command 250 students easily. It also taught me management. And, once COVID hit, I was already running my dojo, but I was only running it like as a kickboxing thing. I wasn't really focused on karate or kids. Once COVID hit, I had already had a couple of kids interested, and I just prayed about it and I asked God, what do you want me to do? My body's getting deteriorated from driving so much every day. It's not making sense financially. I'm going to pray about it. What do you want me to do? And he said, do it for you. And I was like, okay, you said do it for me. I'm going to go all in. And then you know what, dude? 6 months later, I was making the same income as I was at Kickstart.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So question, since you mentioned Kickstart, it's one thing, I know there was at one point during its heyday. That's back when it was, I think it had
Kick
drugs out of America. Yeah. Kick drugs out of America, something like that. But I know at one point, I want to say it was in like 300 or 400 schools at one point. And I know it's not quite that many anymore, but you kind of mentioned a little bit, and maybe that's, in your opinion, do you think it is because of parents nowadays and stuff, and why it didn't continue to grow and get even bigger? Or is it just maybe just not being able to find the right instructors?
Well, I think whenever you're dealing with something like martial arts, which has to deal with life lessons, and you need to talk about building good character, and you have politics governing over how you can teach it based on, restrictions over religion, restrictions over how to tell a kid to take care of themselves. It's just very complicated. And I think Chuck Norris has done the best job out of anybody in systemizing it.
Yep.
If we could somehow follow his league and do the same thing and put it in schools, I imagine how great the world would be if everybody did martial arts. They do that in Japan. Yep. It's a national sport. You got to go and do that. And I believe in Korea too.
Korea too, yep, correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So I believe that's the hardest part. The parents want great students. Believe me, that's the one thing I know. Parents want the best for their kids. It's just, how do we give it to them and give them quality without having so many government restrictions stopping us from giving them what they need? And, the hardest part, and I give it up to all the instructors, they watch the kids who don't have suffer.
Yeah.
They're the only ones that understand what those kids are going through. They absorb that energy so that way they can cleanse those kids. And they're doing this on the daily, man. Like, parents don't see that.
Mm-hmm. No, I get that. And I tried to launch a program locally here, 15 years ago. And I had the principal's full support, but the school board shot it down.
Yeah.
They were worried about insurance. They were worried about injury.
You said it.
Yep,
injuries.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. But I've had other guests like Chris Casamassa. I'm sure you've heard of Chris Casamassa, but the Red Dragon, he was in Mortal Kombat and stuff. But he, I believe he said his program, they have it in like 20 schools out in California.
Wow.
So it's like, there's, people making it, obviously doing it on a smaller scale than Chuck did, but yeah, I've said that for years. I believe everyone should try it at least some point in their life. Everyone should do some martial arts. So,
right.
The other thing is too, then you have people arguing, well, what about, why this style over this style? Why this? So unfortunately, I don't think it'll ever happen because people will find something to complain about, unfortunately.
You know what? I love that you say that, because in the end, it really all came from one place, so it doesn't really matter.
Exactly. I agree.
It's funny how we're all programmed to separate, but when we understand to connect, we find that it's the same thing everywhere else. It's like food. Yeah. You use the same ingredients in food, right?
Yeah.
It's just where you're located at and how you use those ingredients.
Nice. So I know earlier you mentioned doing like some stick fighting training and stuff like that. So have you done any other weapons training? And if so, what's your favorite weapon to train with?
Oh my God. Oh, weapons. I was loving Shaolin Kung Fu as a kid, and that's what made me love it. This video game called Soul Calibur.
Nice.
I watched the forums on that. So I got broadsword, I got straight sword, bow staff, katanas, chain whips, double daggers. I love the sticks. I love the karumbe.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. I love firearms. It's just an expression of self, and how do I transform it into this weapon?
No specific favorite, no standout?
Right now I'm playing with the spear, the Chinese spear.
Nice. Okay.
And the reason I'm really attracted to that is because it really makes you understand how to ground, and as a person who's understanding Okinawan karate right now, the history of Kung Fu and how it has effect on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I apply those stances in karate with the weapon, and it makes me understand how to use it. It kind of talks to me. So right now that's the weapon that's talking to me.
Okay, nice. Curious how you got involved in the movies and doing stunts. What led to that?
Man, I always, ever since I saw Bruce Lee, I was like, man, I want to do that. And then
Mhm.
Jackie Chan came, and then it's just, I was always embodying them whenever I fight, whenever I do anything. And so, you only live once, so I just figured, why not? Moving to Austin gave me that opportunity.
Yep.
Working at I Love Kickboxing put me in connection with a gentleman named Aaron Alexander, who was running a fight choreography kind of school every Sunday called Faux Fighting. And now it's back here in Austin for those who want to come. It's there back here in Austin. It's only $10 a class and they're awesome.
Wow.
And so these guys basically brought people in who have no experience at all, and they taught them how to put it on film. How do you do a fight scene? What should you be thinking about? How do you be safe? How do you do a fall? How do you involve weapons? They gave you the full spectrum.
That's cool.
And so after that, they started pulling people into projects, and it so happened that they started pulling me into it. Their careers started launching, and, knowing them, they just started pulling me into small projects here and there. And that's basically how I got my start. If it wasn't for them, I probably would have found some other avenue, but I'm so thankful that it happened so organically like that because they were all martial artists as well.
Mm-hmm. So do you prefer stunts or do you prefer the acting?
It depends on the role.
Okay.
And honestly, who I'm working with.
Okay. That makes sense. How many have you got to be involved in so far?
Now that I'm a little bit older and I've got maybe like 10 years into this, if I had to run it off the top of my head, maybe 15.
Wow. That's kind of cool.
Maybe. Yeah, it's really cool. Nice. It's really cool to see just how being disciplined and being consistent and having good relationships, how it pays off.
In the intro, I mentioned you doing audiobooks for martial artists. Kind of what led to that, and how many of those have you helped record?
So this is interesting because it was never a thing that I wanted to do. I just kind of have the skill set, and I happen to know a bunch of martial artists. And so I started talking to Grandmaster Lockhart because he's just such a great resource on how to connect the old with the new. Like he tells these stories that are just, it's like an old kung fu master. When he tells them, you're just locked in. And he's got so many jewels. And I was like, man, people need to hear this. So that's how I started documenting. And so I just started documenting conversations we had. And then next thing you know, Carmichael's like, hey, I got this book I need to put out. Can we record it at your place? I was like, yeah, bet, man. Come on.
Nice.
And then that's how it just kind of started. And now I got another client. I can't say his name right now, but he's interested in doing the same thing. And so I just figured, God's asking me to do something for people. And if I have the skill sets, why not?
Are most of the ones you've worked with, are they doing the voices themselves, or are they like bringing in a professional voiceover person?
No, they're doing them themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, I really appreciate that because nobody can tell the story like they do.
Yeah.
And that's the fun part for me is like I get to be there and really feel the emotions and kind of watch their movie sitting right next to them, listening to them.
Yeah. I definitely give you props for that because like I do professional voiceover. I have for over 25 years, but I will not do audiobooks. I don't have the patience for it because I have friends that do audiobooks for a living full time. They make damn good money doing it. That's all they do all day in their studio. And I talked to them about, when I first got into voiceover, I talked to a few about their process and what it takes. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'll stick to like commercials and short-term stuff and e-learning projects, but I have no interest in doing audiobooks. So definitely props for you for sitting through that process with people.
Thank you. And that's why I say, again, it depends on who the person is. Like with Carmichael, it was very organic. Like we knocked this thing out in like maybe 4 or 5 sessions, and every session just felt easy.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's cool. And then, like me personally, I'm not a huge, like I love reading books, but I'm not a fan of audiobooks. I've listened to very few just because I like reading it myself, and I get why people like it, definitely, but I'm more of a fan of having the paper in my hand and reading a physical book. And one of the only audiobooks I've ever truly enjoyed is actually a fellow person from Austin, Matthew McConaughey's book that came out a couple years ago. Yeah, because he did the voice himself and he read his own book. And the book is one of my favorite books, like autobiography he's ever written. And he did such a good job telling those stories. So that's why I definitely get why you're saying that, telling for a book like that where it's an autobiography type thing or something, I definitely get why it makes more sense to have the person do it themselves. So I get why that would be an appeal. So Very cool. Hopefully you'll get more of those coming and continued success with that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So one thing I got to ask you, you mentioned, a while ago, having tickets and going to see the World Combat League. How cool was that to see live? Because I actually have every one of them on bootleg DVD. I watched them live when they were on like 20 years ago. How cool was that to see live?
Man, it was that's still a staple in my life. It's still a staple in my life because it's like coming home.
Yeah.
It's like coming home. All of the martial artists came, every single one from every single school. And we're all there just for one purpose, to be entertained by the greatest fighters. And when the crowd roared, man, oh man, and the energy was just different. I've been to UFC fights.
Yeah.
Nothing was like WCL.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I can't believe it didn't make it. I really can't. I don't know if it was just a marketing problem or what, but it was such a good product.
Oh my God. You know what also made it so good was afterwards you could go into the hallway and talk to every single fighter.
Oh, that's cool. Wow.
They were so humble. They wanted that. They loved that.
Wow. Yeah. Because if I remember correctly, that's where Felice Herrig got her start. If I remember, she was one of the original WCL. She was one of the first female ones. And I remember watching one of the Guy Metzger fights. And I'll still go back and pull out those DVDs and watch them every now and then because they're so much fun and such entertaining and good fights.
Yeah. You remember Wonder Boy?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
He was there.
Yep. I'm actually trying to get his dad on the show because his dad's martial arts school is pretty successful and he's very well known. And so far, no luck, but I put the request in, so fingers crossed.
Good luck to you, sir. I'm gonna pray on that for you so you can do that because, I want to know. I want to know his secrets too because he's very good at putting the old with the new as well.
Yep.
That's what I really appreciate about him.
Yep. That's the same thing with like Chris Casamassa and his dad, where he's, had black belts in like 7 styles and blended them together and traditional and modern and, guys, kind of like what Bruce Lee was doing. But the guys who were doing stuff like that, like Greg Jackson, I interviewed Greg Jackson on the show, from Jackson Wink MMA and stuff, and hearing about how he started his own style when he was in high school.
That's amazing.
Yeah, people like that. And that's something like when I was younger, I wanted to do. I just, my life took a different path. I've trained in many styles, but I never got around to starting my own. I remember one point when was it Napoleon Dynamite came out? And the dude, Rex Kwon Do. I was like, man, dude, I could do Bri Kwon Do. Come on.
Oh, yes. The American pants.
I know. I never did Bri Kwon Do. I tell you, though, I want to see a fight between Rex Kwon Do and Master Ken. I think that would be the ultimate thing.
Why haven't that happened yet?
I don't know. I've actually messaged Master Ken. I'm like, dude, you got to have Rex Kwon Do on your show. He's like the ultimate thing. Who knows? Maybe someone will hear this and make it happen. Fingers crossed. Yes. So in all your years of martial arts throughout your life, is there one philosophy that's at the top of your list?
These last couple years, the theme has been connection.
Nice. Okay.
Connection in everything, like connection with your people, connection with how you eat, connection how you take care of yourself when you're doing your martial arts, how you're connecting to the ground, how are you connecting to your opponent. Everything is connection. Nothing is separate anymore for me.
Okay. I like that. That's a great answer. How about a worst martial arts related injury?
Oh, man. I would say this is my own fault, self-inflicted.
Mm-hmm.
Right before a tournament, an international tournament in San Antonio, I was practicing the night before and I was doing a no-handed cartwheel.
Ooh, okay.
And I sprained my ankle. The ankle had been sprained before, so this is a reoccurring injury.
Okay.
Didn't listen to myself. Still practiced, injured it even more. So the next day, I could not do the form.
Oh, dang.
But I still decided to fight.
Oh, of course. How did that go?
I felt the tendon rolling over my ankle while I was fighting. And And so now, as I'm older, I'm very tuned in now because, this new, I wouldn't say new, but learning Goju has really taught me how to tune in. And I start seeing all of my old injuries come up and I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah, I remember why that happened.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on like MMA and the UFC? I know you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but what overall, what are your thoughts on that?
Me personally, I'm getting bored, honestly.
Same. Exactly the same. Yep.
I'm getting bored. Like, it's becoming WWE
in
a sense. And there's no disrespect to anybody, but either they're not showing the journey of these martial artists, or the quality just isn't there for me. Just for me personally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that I can do what they can do. I definitely can respect that. But for me as an observer and as a fan and as a consumer, I'm getting a little bit bored.
I used to be diehard. I never missed one. And
Same.
I honestly, I bet I haven't sat down and watched a full UFC in over 10 years.
Same. That's the same for me.
And I used to judge them. I used to judge local MMA. I judged, probably 1,000 fights over like a 10-year period. And I haven't done that also in probably over 10 years. It's just doesn't do it for me anymore.
Brian, can I ask you this? What do you think it is? Like, why do you think we feel this?
Kind of what you said, the WWE thing. It's, it's a lot of that. And I mean, I'm a fan of the ground fighting, but I've always been more of a fan of the stand up. That's why, some of my guests have been talking about that. They're trying to bring back the PKA kickboxing. And I'm like, I hope that happens. It'd be so, so cool. But the other thing with me is for the first, 10, 15 years of the UFC, like the first couple of years, there was one or two a year. Then it was maybe, a handful a year. And then it was, one a month. It got to the point where there was one or two a week, and it just got to be too much.
Oversaturation.
Yeah. And I did not appreciate when the UFC bought all the smaller ones. Like they bought Pride, they bought, all these other ones, and just instead of keeping them going separate to have better options, they put them all under one. I loved Pride. Like a lot of people, ONE FC, they think is better than the UFC. I love ONE FC.
Yeah.
So yeah,
they're definitely more entertaining in my opinion.
Yeah. So yeah, I think a lot of those things add to it. I mean, if one comes on, and I'm around, I'll watch it, but I don't go out of my way. I don't get the pay-per-views anymore. I don't go out of my way to watch them.
Same.
But like I said, if I'm flipping channels and I see one, I'll tune in and see if it's a good fight. I'll watch it, but I don't go out of the way to do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I have a few fun questions we use to wrap up the show. We were just talking about the UFC. So let's say, in another world or something, you decided you were going to step into the octagon. What's your walk-up music going to be? What song's playing as you're walking into the octagon?
Man, I thought about this myself.
Yeah.
There's this song. It's called 365. You ain't going to be able to find it anywhere except for SoundCloud, on my SoundCloud.
Okay.
And it's by this gentleman named Roel Banda, and I've recorded his music before.
Nice.
But him and this gentleman named TK, they made this song called 365, and it's just one of those songs that, as martial artists, we work every day. And that would be the song that I would walk out to. It would just center me. It would calm me, but it would also keep me hype. And it would remind me where I came from.
That's cool. You'll have to send me a link to it or something. I'd love to hear it.
I'll definitely do that.
I'm a music guy, so I like, I love music. And I know mine is the You're the Best from the Karate Kid.
Ooh,
yeah.
Around.
That's right.
Nothing's gonna ever keep you down.
That's one of the ringtones on my phone even. So
it's so classic.
It is. I love it. So yeah, that's cool. And that question, I get anywhere from, like Rocky is picked a lot, and, Eye of the Tiger is picked, but I've had people pick, Iron Maiden and Metallica, and someone a couple weeks ago picked Barry Manilow, which I thought was pretty awesome. So it's like, hey, whatever gets you motivated to walk into that cage, I guess.
Right.
All right. Now, this one doesn't have to be 4 names. I've had people give as few as 2 and as many as 8, but 3, 4, 5 names you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts.
That's pretty easy.
Okay.
You said 3, 4?
3, 4, 5. It's kind of up. Like I said, I've had people give it from 2 to 8.
Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Jet Li, Gordon Liu.
Nice.
Oh man, there's so many. Oh, this next one's gonna be hard because now I'm like, if there's only 5, shit. Vegeta. I know that it's not a person, but it's an anime character.
Yeah.
But it would be Vegeta.
Okay. Hey, I put Mr. Miyagi on mine, so that's a fictional character. Come on.
Hey, yeah, there you go.
Nice.
Like, who motivates me like that? Yeah. Who motivates me?
That's cool. All right. How about a favorite martial arts book?
The Bubishi.
Okay. I don't think I've read that one.
It's a journey for me, man. Like just learning karate in general and learning Goju and just backtracking everything. That manual has really enlightened me to understand that it's all came from the same place. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. And we're all doing the same things. It's just we got it and deciphered it differently. But for me, it's like understanding my lineage going into Goju and seeing how it's like directly influenced by Miyagi and seeing who is in the Bubishi that links down and that creates me, who's like a fourth generation.
Okay, I like it. I'll have to add that one on my list and check it out. All right, this one, I know you talked a little bit about video games, so favorite martial arts video game?
Bro, oh my God. I gotta go into categories now.
Okay.
Tekken.
Nice.
Tekken.
That's usually my pick too. I love it.
Yes, it's the most practical game to me as far as picking fighting styles, excuse me, and being able to apply it, right? Like if you could do it on Tekken, you could do it in real life. People don't believe you can, but I say it differ.
Yep. That's cool. See, when that came out, I was actually working at a Walmart in the electronics department, and it was such a huge deal. And we'd like stay after when the store closed for like 2 hours playing Tekken in the electronics department.
You know it, man. It was ruining our lives back in the day.
Yep.
Then once you figured out how to juggle, oh man.
That is awesome. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
I'm real big into anime.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of good ones lately. As far as favorite, I'm always going to be a Dragon Ball person, like for life.
Nice.
So if I have to say favorite, it's Dragon Ball. It motivated me throughout my whole life.
Now, I remember reading last year that there was a new Bruce Lee anime coming out. Has that come out yet? And if it is, have you seen it? Because
No, but I've seen some previews, like little clips here and there. You know, that's what's also very cool about being able to work with Miss Shannon Lee and the Bruce Lee Foundation is that like I get to watch my idol come to life and to be able to give back to him because he's given so much to me and he hasn't even been like physically been here.
Yeah.
So I'm once that comes out, that's probably going to be the one.
Okay. That one's on my list. I've never been really into anime, but I already said I'm watching that one when it comes out. That's cool.
You see, It's even making people who aren't fans.
Exactly.
I love it.
It's Bruce, man. I gotta. All right. How about a favorite martial arts movie?
It goes back to Fist of Fury, Chinese Connection.
Yep.
That's like my base stance, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
For movies, like that's my foundation. I can never not learn something when I watch that movie.
I actually need to rewatch that one. I haven't watched that in about 5 years, so I need to pull out the DVD and watch it again.
If you would, instead of watching how Bruce fights, watch how he acts.
Okay.
Oh, it's so genius.
Nice. I'll have to do that today, maybe. I got some free time when we're done here, so maybe I'll do that. Well, to back up a little, we talked about TV show and you talked about working with Shannon. So I'm assuming you've watched Warrior. Are you a fan of that show too?
Oh man, the production on that film.
Good. Yeah,
I'm like a fanboy at whenever I see her and talk to her because I just see what she's doing and it's so Bruce would be so proud, man, and like it feels good in my heart, and I just pray that all the success goes to her because man. To keep something like this alive is so important for us as martial artists.
Yes. And when that hit Netflix, I binged the whole thing in 3 weeks. So
you know it. so smart.
Yeah.
So smart.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to get the gentleman who starred in it. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I'm trying to get him on the show. I put a request in and I'm really hoping that one comes through. So fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. Let's see.
Definitely. All right. Final question. This one does not have to be a martial arts movie. Any movie you've ever seen, favorite movie fight scene?
Ip Man, when he's whooping everybody. Oh,
that's awesome.
You can feel it so much. You can feel how angry he is. They did such a great job of telling the story of which led up to that fight. And that's it. It lives in my soul.
So amazing.
Oh, yes. It was just, I've never seen anything like it at that time. And, not to take away from Tony Jaa whenever he did
Ong Bak,
because that did the same thing for me.
Yep.
But knowing that Yip Man was the sole purpose for Bruce, helped Bruce so much, I guess that kind of connected me so much to him.
Yeah.
But that fight scene, I had never seen anything like that.
That's cool.
And, as a stuntman to watch how much emotion and how hard he's hitting these fools.
Yeah.
I appreciate it on a whole different level.
That's awesome. Well, Nelson, before I let you go, is there anything that I forgot to ask you or you just want to be sure we mention really quick?
The only thing that I really have pressing right now is I've got some students that are pretty amazing. And we've had the opportunity to represent Team USA in Panama and Japan this year.
Nice.
And so what I'm doing right now is I'm looking for sponsors who can help with some finances on that.
Very cool.
Not only they, but I have been able to be accepted on the team as well. And that's about the only thing. If you want to help support, you can contact me personally, shoot me a message, austinkaratecenter.com. And yeah, that's the main thing that we're focusing on right now is like, we're really focused on these kids and boosting the next generation. Cause we know if these kids will do it, then the next line of kids will want to do it. And that's how we want to kind of propel martial arts for everybody in our community.
That's cool. No, I will definitely put a link for the school out there. So if anyone needs to reach out and contact you, they can do that. And hopefully we can maybe get you some help and get the kids going over there. That'd be awesome.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Cool. Well, Nelson, seriously, man, this has been so much fun. I mean, I love Carmichael and anyone he recommends, I'm definitely gonna chat with because he's been such a good part of the show and helping the show start way back when. But this has been so much fun. I love chatting with you. I love getting to know you, and hopefully we can stay in touch and keep it going. But I think the listeners are really gonna love this episode.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the time, and don't forget, everybody. Once Carmichael's book come out, you're gonna want to pick it up. It's not gonna be your normal book. I can't say much about it, but it's going to help so many people in ways that I feel is needed. And I hope that it intrigues you as much as it intrigued me recording it.
That's awesome. I will, when that comes out, I'll put a link on his episode too for that. Cause that's one cool thing when new people find my podcast, such a high percentage of them go back and listen to every episode. I mean, I had someone just email me a couple weeks ago, like, yeah, I've binged like all 200 episodes in the last 3 months. I'm like, thank you. That's really cool. so
quality product, Brian, quality product, you know, and the same for
best.
you. If Carmichael mentions anything and he said, you know, I highly recommend you. When I say highly recommend, I mean, you should do it. I listen. So I know he's surrounded by great people, and obviously, you know, thank you for this opportunity, and I hope to meet you in person and continue this relationship.
I hope so, man. This has been so much fun. I appreciate it.
Likewise.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.
This podcast is a production of Unfiltered Studios. If you would like to know more about joining Unfiltered Studios, please visit our website at unfpod.com for more information.